Hello. Hey, Steve. How are you doing? Um, hey, Anne from Sweden. She's already ahead of me. If anyone out there wants to tell us where you're coming from, I have a new office. I'm coming outside of Nashville. I'm super proud of it right now. So it's exciting to see everybody. All right, Kinga from Texas. We're gonna be in Texas in a few weeks. I think it's the first week of September. We have a True Quality Roadshow in Austin. Not trying to promote that, but if you're there, please definitely come say hi. Montreal, Norway. Awesome. Hey, Kim. Hey, Aaron. How are you all doing today?
Doing well. How are you doing, Nathan?
Good. We'll give it just a few minutes because those of you who've been here before have heard me say this. It doesn't let everybody in all at the same time. So we're going to just make sure everybody gets here and we have a quorum. So let's just give it just a few minutes. We have representation from all over the world, it looks like. So it's really exciting. Um, Denmark, North Carolina, in some ways they're a little bit similar. Um, I hope no one takes offense to that, but I love both places. I'd be interested, just while we give it one more minute, if you want to let us know if this is your first Greenlight Guru event, and if it's not, what your favorite Greenlight Guru event has been. It's one of my, I'm always interested in reading that feedback. If you care to share that in the chat. Okay, I think we have a quorum. So welcome to today's webinar, live with the FDA, accelerating a quality culture at your medical device company. My name is Etienne Nichols. I'm the moderator for today, and I'm the head of industry education and insights here at Greenlight Guru. During today's session, we invite you to actively participate. A lot of you already are, which is great. I love seeing that. But the chat specifically is just to use to connect with fellow attendees and to talk amongst yourself as you like. The Q&A tab, if you look at the top right, that is for the specific questions to ask our presenters. So if you have a question you'd like me to ask them later on and during the Q&A section, use that. Even if you don't have a question that you want to ask yourself, feel free to go over to the Q&A section and upvote those questions. So if there are any that are relevant to you, you can upvote those. One other thing, we will be sending out the full recording and the presentation slides to all registrants after the live event, so watch your inbox for that follow-up email. I'd like to say a few things about Greenlight Guru. At Greenlight Guru, our mission is to improve the quality of life through our work in the medtech industry, which is likely a shared goal to many of you who are here today. We host these free webinars to share valuable insights, learn from top industry experts, and showcase our industry-leading solutions. Our software is designed to help medtech companies bring life-changing products to patients faster, more efficiently, and with less risk. Our medtech suite includes software solutions for product development, quality management, and clinical data management, and they're all tailored specifically for the medical device industry. If you're interested in joining over 1,100 leading medtech companies that trust Greenlight Guru, visit www.greenlight.guru for your personalized demo after today's webinar. Now, to introduce you to today's presenters. Kim Kaplan is a senior product manager at ISACA and has been a key collaborator on the Case for Quality Voluntary Improvement Program, or the VIP, since the development of its pilot in 2017. She's a certified CMMI associate and appraisal team member for VIP and now sits as a standing advisor on the VIP governing committee. Kim led ISACA's 2022 launch of the VIP portal, a new data management tool to help program stakeholders track individual continuous improvement journeys, as well as identify broader industry trends and insights. Aaron Keith is a senior advisor in the compliance and quality staff, which is responsible for strategic compliance and quality program development, compliance and enforcement strategy, OPEC compliance and quality review policies and practices, as well as CDRH and ORA joint policy development. With over 20 years of experience with the FDA, Aaron is currently focused on the quality program development, compliance policy, and activities related to implementing the new Quality Management System Regulation, or QMSR. Aaron also represents FDA on international harmonization and standards and development activities. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Kim and Aaron, for today's feature presentation.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So what are we talking about with the Voluntary Improvement Program? Well, this is a collaborative initiative between US FDA, the Medical Device Innovation Consortium, or MDIC, the medical device industry, and my organization, ISACA. So this Case for Quality came about after a 2011 study that FDA conducted, which found that organizations which were compliant were facing similar types and frequencies of issues as non-compliant organizations. And so they launched the Case for Quality initiative at that time and enlisted MDIC to provide a safe space where industry, agency, and other ecosystem representatives like patient advocacy groups, healthcare providers, and so on could come together, represent all of the voices in that community, and find solutions that couldn't be solved by any one group alone. Out of the Case for Quality, there were many initiatives, and one of them looked at finding a maturity model that could be leveraged to help organizations move beyond the established standard of regulatory compliance towards advancing medical device quality and safety through predictive and sustainable practices, ultimately to achieve better patient outcomes. So MDIC contracted Deloitte to conduct a study of 22 different maturity models, and they chose the CMMI framework, or the Capability Maturity Model Integration, as the best suited for the Case for Quality because of its wide global adoption and its flexibility to be fit for purpose. So we worked with FDA and industry through MDIC to tailor this framework, the CMMI, for the medical device space. So the CMMI is a set of best practices that was developed through academia, trying to understand which behaviors, when present in organizations, increase the likelihood of them being able to deliver on time, within budget, and of high quality. Although we originally started in the software space, we've since expanded to manufacturing, data management, workforce empowerment, supplier acquisitions, so on and so forth. This is not only a model, but there's also an accompanying appraisal method. So we can use this as a mechanism to evaluate medical device manufacturing quality. It also comes with training, certification tools, systems, and guidelines. So VIP leverages MDAP, and participants in the program are committing to continuous improvement and data sharing, which helps give FDA confidence to offer certain regulatory opportunities that can accelerate improvements to patients. I know Erin will speak a little bit more about that in the second half of this presentation. So all of these activities are meant to help encourage a culture of quality across an organization and really across industry. So I'm going to share just a little bit of our adoption and then talk about how this works. So we initially had some early adopters in 2017 before we officially launched in 2018. You can see we've continued to grow enrollment year over year. In terms of the number of appraisals that we've delivered every year, you can see that has steadily grown, with a slight dip in 2020 when we needed to figure out how to shift to virtual services in light of the pandemic. We started with those that were at lowest risk and moved to higher risk groups until we were able to convert fully, and that's where you see this jump in 2021. And while this initiative was originally targeting the highest risk Class 3 PMA products, you can actually see we have the largest representation from Class 2 devices. And even though we're working with US FDA, we have 36% of participants internationally located, and we currently have about 4% of our participants registered as small businesses with FDA. Okay, so I want to talk about how this works by using a case study. So we had one organization that had a number of sites all over the world, and they wanted to see if this program was right for them. So they picked one of their sites that was more mature, more of a legacy site, and they picked one that had been more recently acquired and was still facing maybe some culture challenges. Now, by all accounts, these two sites looked the same, They both went through their inspections and passed, no OAIs. They looked at their internal metrics and both were high functioning. But based on the feedback they had been hearing, they suspected something was off with the second site. So they decided to enroll both of these locations into the program. So we processed the applications and FDA reviewed their eligibility criteria and approved them within about 5 days. Then within the first 60 days, we met with the organization to understand what their objectives were, what their pain points were, how they were structured. We assigned them a lead appraiser, so someone who would lead their assessment. And they worked with the organization to determine what products would be in scope, which aspects of the organization, how we were going to sample, who we were going to talk to, what the schedule would look like, and essentially the overall plan in terms of logistics, risk, conflicts of interest, etc. And then the organization conducted their appraisal within that first 90 to 120 days. And the results came in. So for the first site, Site A, we used a red, yellow, green map to share results. So green meaning that the intent of one of our framework best practices is met. Yellow meaning that it's partially met. So in some places, maybe your organization is doing it, maybe in other places it's not, or maybe it's only being kind of done everywhere. And then red meaning that this best practice is absent or being poorly executed within the organization. So you can see the first site was mostly greens with a handful of yellows. And these are not the real results. These are, modified so that we can share. And then Site B. So for the very first time, the organization could see that this second location did in fact have challenges, and they could see exactly where those challenges were in the organization. So you can see a lot of yellows, quite a few reds, and only some greens. So I'm going to just focus on Site B now. So after that appraisal, we reviewed the results, did our own quality assurance to make sure that our appraisers were following our rules and regulations. We sent a summary of the results to FDA. And then we continue to meet with the site on a quarterly basis to check in on how they were going to prioritize their results, how the progress was going against the projects to improve against the gaps that were identified, and to collect some performance data. And then after a year, we conducted a second appraisal. And we saw improvement. Now, I want to say we don't expect perfection. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to see that the organization is committed to improving, and that can be incremental. And so we saw that some of the yellows moved to green, some of the reds moved to yellow. But what does this really mean? What does this practically mean for the organization? Well, within that year, they were able to increase their daily production by 62%, decrease the staff turnover they were having by 70%, reduce the time to identify the root cause of issues by 90%, and reduce their complaint incidents per million by 95%. There were also some less tangible benefits. The corporate site felt like this location was motivated for the right reasons now. So rather than maybe trying to hide the problems, they were more open to sharing where they were struggling and seeking the support that they needed from corporate. They also noticed that this site's relationship with FDA evolved for the better, and they saw this accelerated culture change within that site. So all amazing results. And I want to talk a little bit about how we can use these kinds of results to identify trends within industry. So every organization that goes through one of these appraisals has a subset of the model that they look at. We try to look at the same subset for every organization in the first year in order to establish a baseline for industry. And so this is actually real data. So I pulled this a little bit ago. So with the first 85 sites that came in through the program, all of them look at this practice called implementation infrastructure. This is all about the stickiness of your processes. So how do you know that in times of high stress or high turnover that things are going to continue happening the way that they should? And so you can see that there's quite a lot of partials, I think over 60% partials in practice 2.1. So practice 2.1 is all about making sure that the organization is providing the right resources, skills, training, funding to their staff in order to set them up for success to deliver against the processes required to meet objectives. So you can see that in this case, a lot of staff were not being supported appropriately in order to meet the objectives of the organization. So we identified this as kind of an industry-wide gap or opportunity. And then we noticed in the second year, a little more than half of those who went in the first year decided to go up a level in where they view. So going from level 2, so 1.1 is level 1 practice 1, 2.1 is level 2 practice 1. You can see here now we have level 3 practices included. So what we saw is that those that went to level 3, they actually did a good job of closing this gap. So now it's more than 50% are satisfied. And now we see a new primary opportunity emerging in practice 3.1. So practice 3.1 in implementation infrastructure is all about taking lessons learned from individual projects that are being managed to create organizational assets that allow for consistency in the way work is done across departments and across different divisions, as well as figuring out what are the ways that we should build flexibility and tailoring for different nuances. So you can see that became the new opportunity in the second year. So I wanted to share a little bit about how this information is now allowing us to see broader industry trends and focus in on helping industry improve in those areas. Now, each of these red, yellow, greens corresponds to a percentage. And when we aggregate that percentage across a practice area like implementation infrastructure, we get an aggregate percentage. And so you can see that for implementation infrastructure in the first year, most of industry was skewing to 41 to 60% met. And then in the second year, those that looked at level 3 were skewing more to the 61 to 80% met. So we can see kind of this shift in how industry is doing overall as well. Now through this, we're also able to allow for some comparisons. So a single location unit can now look at any given year how they are doing compared to industry in that same year, who look at the same practices to the same levels. And this really isn't meant necessarily to look at apples to apples, but it's to give you a sense of where is industry leading, where is industry lagging, and how do you compare? It might help an organization focus in on like, hey, you know, industry actually is doing pretty well in monitoring and controlling their plans, but we are not. So maybe this is something that we want to focus on. And we can actually break this down even more granularly to say, hey, you know, maybe most of industry is yellow in practice 2.4, but we are red. So maybe that's something we want to take a look at. So really this is meant for informative purposes, but it's now something that we're able to do with the VIP portal that Etienne mentioned earlier. Okay, so with that context, I want to talk about why this worked the way it did. And one of the key reasons is that this is not another audit by a different name. It is very different in the approach and the intent. So some of the key distinctions here. So VIP focuses on the capabilities and activities that add value to an organization. It does not check for compliance to the Code of Federal Regulations, because that is a prerequisite to enrolling in the program. So we're not even looking at exactly the same set of stuff. We're looking at what was previously an industry agnostic view of practices that will help any organization. We are collecting information by talking to individual contributors. So I'm sure many of you have had the experience where maybe your documentation says one thing, but some staff do things a little bit differently. This allows us to understand how work is actually performed. So our primary source of evidence is through these conversations with the people doing the work. And our secondary source would be then documentation like standard operating procedures. But because our primary source are these conversations, we don't need to have a back room and a front room. We don't need to take people off the line. We don't need to have a group of people just waiting to manage the flow of information that would typically happen in an audit. And finally, with VIP, we're looking to drive discussions for how to improve performance in the organization in a way that makes sense with the business's objectives, which are often, quality, patient care. We don't expect every single opportunity we identify to be addressed like a corrective action list. That can take a lot of time. That can mean you're not putting all your resources to where they're going to have the biggest impact. So we really focus on helping organizations prioritize what is going to move the needle the most in the areas that matter. As a result, our participants report that they're able to use 75 to 85% fewer resources and time than a typical audit or inspection. Okay, at the end of every appraisal that we conduct for an organization, we send out a survey to everyone who was involved. So for last year, we had almost 500 survey responses. And these are, again, from the people that we're talking to, the people who are doing the work, but also those in leadership that are sponsoring the event. So as a result, last year, we had about 88% of our respondents that had an excellent or above average experience with the appraisal. 93% believed that the appraisal identified opportunities that would have a direct impact to improve product quality. Almost 78% believe that the appraisal provided broader value add to the organization beyond just product quality. And we achieved about a plus 54 net promoter score. So this is a range from negative 100 to positive 100. It asks on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this program to a peer or a colleague? Any 9s and 10s are considered promoters. 6 and below are considered detractors. It takes the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors to get this score. So a positive 54 is considered excellent for this industry. In those surveys, for anyone going through their second year, we also asked what was the impact of product quality by participating in this program. And we see 3 major themes arise. The first one is around communication. So organizations feeling more aligned around their objectives as a company. This means, leadership is setting the goals, and those goals are translated to departments, and that's translated to individuals. So every individual knows how what they do contributes to the bottom line. There's more access and sharing between departments, so getting the right people together early, rather than finding out later we missed a requirement and now we have to redo the work. More standardization of reporting, better understanding of measurement systems and tracking mechanisms for accountability to those metrics. The second theme was shifting from being reactive in nature to more proactive, and in some cases even predictive. So more rigor and predictability in new product development and staff training, more risk mitigation when it comes to non-conforming products, process control, supply chain resiliency, faster decision making. I'm sure we can all appreciate that and want more, the ability to make decisions faster. And then the last theme we heard was around culture. So really kind of pursuing systemic changes with lasting benefits rather than maybe putting a Band-Aid on a problem for now. Shifting from tactical thinking to strategic thinking. So rather than getting caught in the day-to-day, sort of where do we want to go and what are the steps that we need to take to get from here to there? And really, I hear this so often, but the recognition that every single person contributes to quality. It's not just the quality department, it's everybody. Everybody has a direct or indirect impact, and so every role matters. Okay, so those were some of the themes we've heard. We've also heard more quantitative results from participating in the program. Things like being able to decrease the time it takes to close complaints by 27%, reaching almost 900 more high-risk patients with life-saving treatment, 4xing manufacturing capacity, and maybe even being able to have another $15 million of sales from getting those products out the door faster. One of the quotes from one of our key stakeholders, Connor Dolan at Boston Scientific, he had said, I won't read it exactly, but basically this program enabled his company to establish relationships with their peers for sharing best practices. So we have a number of mechanisms where participants in this program can meet with one another and learn from one another. It also strengthened their relationship with FDA, and most significantly, it has turned around benefits to their patients and customers around the world. So part of this is through the regulatory opportunities that are provided. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Erin Keith, to talk about FDA's side of this.
Thanks, Kim. So, thank you, Kim. Let me just take a moment to say thank you to Greenlight Guru for the opportunity hosting this event so we could speak about the Voluntary Improvement Program this afternoon. And again, I'm Erin Keith. I'm at CDRH. I'm in the Office of Product Evaluation and Quality. Can we go to the next slide, Kim? So Kim covered a lot of the background of the VIP program, but I'll put a VIP in some context for you. CDRH began the case for quality, which Kim did talk about a bit about, in 2011 to improve the quality, the safety, and the availability of medical devices in the United States. And one of the elements of that overarching initiative is the Voluntary Improvement Program. There are a few others. There's the collaborative community with that MDIC facilitates. There is an effort at information sharing that's called Medias and Safe Space. And then there's also the Advanced Manufacturing Clearinghouse. And collectively, all of these initiatives are trying to get at issues that impact the quality of products in the United States so that we can get to our goal of having high quality, safe, and effective devices available in the United States as patients need them. So go to the next slide, Kim. The Voluntary Improvement Program started as a pilot in 2018, and we recently converted it to a permanent program by issuing the final guidance, Fostering Medical Device Improvement, that explains FDA's role in the improvement of the Voluntary Improvement Program. It also talks about how stakeholders engage with the VIP program, not just FDA. One of the major issues and concerns people have is what are the criteria for enrolling in the program? And the criteria are quite broad, so it's open to a huge percentage of medical device companies out there and their sites. First off, you need to be a company that is involved in the medical device manufacturer that is part of the life cycle of devices distributed in the US. You need to have a positive compliance history. That means you've had an FDA inspection or an MDSAP audit that turned out either to require no action indicated or voluntary action indicated, the NAI and VAI categories. You need to have no open OAI status inspections. So if you had an OAI inspection in the past and you've had a recent VAI or NAI, you need to make sure that all of those OAI issues are addressed prior to enrollment. and you can't be the subject of an open judicial action. Enrolled sites can take advantage of a couple of regulatory opportunities. There's a modified format for the PMA and HDE 30-day notice, site change, and original manufacturing submissions. With the 30-day notice comes a reduced time frame goal of 10 days for the review of the 30-day notice and a 29-day reduced goal for the site change submissions. Newly enrolled sites are also afforded a 2-year reprieve from the typical surveillance inspection to provide the site the space to focus on implementing their continuous improvement program and the culture at their site. Additionally, the enrollment requirements and regulatory opportunities, in addition to the enrollment requirements and regulatory opportunities, there are other expectations for both FDA and industry. For example, for industry to remain enrolled in the program, they commit to an annual appraisal. They engage with the appraiser when the appraisals are happening. They commit to the agreed upon appraisal process. They participate in their quarterly check-ins with their lead appraiser. They provide performance metrics to ISACA on a quarterly basis and are proactive in notifying FDA regarding any product safety issues or recalls that are occurring as they're participating in the program. For those sites and those companies that choose to enroll from the program, they can expect from FDA that FDA commits to confirming the site eligibility for enrollment, engaging proactively with the participating sites to resolve any safety issues they're experiencing or we notice, contact and engage with the participating manufacturing sites to discuss and resolve any issues that might, any safety issues that might occur or come to the FDA's attention during the appraisal process itself that could jeopardize participation in VIP. This has not happened yet, but we wanted to have in place a statement for everyone that we were committed to participation in VIP, and if there is a way to resolve those issues should they occur, our idea would be to do so in order to ensure continued participation. FDA and VIP participants essentially have this shared goal of proactively and quickly addressing quality issues or safety risks that arise during the program participation through collaboration and communication. Kim, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So recently we did an internal assessment of the VIP program, and the time frame was from 2018 to present. So essentially the time period of the pilot. What we did was we conducted interviews with FDA staff and VIP participating sites to identify the value that they took away from participation in VIP and potentially any challenges that they were experiencing. We found that FDA staff valued the least burdensome, streamlined review process that was developed for them, and they valued the time they saved in the VIP review compared to a 30-day notice review, and while they were able to maintain their confidence in their regulatory decisions. Participating sites identified the value in their continued enrollment in VIP in a lot of different ways. Some of the key and common refrains that we heard were they valued the culture change that came about as a result of participation, that their change in perspective from looking forward towards improving their processes versus looking backwards to confirm compliance was highly valuable to them. They valued the best practices in coaching that they received from the lead appraisers during the appraisals themselves and at the quarterly check-ins. Of course, they valued the savings that they obtained from their continuous improvement projects. High on their list was their improved communications that occurred internally, that people became more honest and open and were not afraid to share challenges and problems the companies were having so they could be addressed. And they also valued the improved communication and relationship that developed with FDA as a result of participating. And of course, some of the companies also excuse me, valued the FDA regulatory opportunities that occurred by participating in the program. Kim did mention a lot of different improvement projects and the results that occurred for participants in VIP so far. Overall, I would say that industry reported to us that their improvement projects had led to safer product and improved access of their products to patients. The improved access to devices stem from the improvement projects, such where they increased their production drastically. That greater manufacturing capacity allowed more patients to be treated and have access to their products. The faster time to market for manufacturing changes that are submitted to through the FDA regulatory opportunities is another way that improved patient, we consider access for patients was improved by participation in this project, in this program. So the next couple of slides are going to be about the data that we looked at in the recall program, and it shows why FDA believes that this program helps reduce risks for patients. So if we could go to the next slide, I think it's, yeah, that's it. So this is just a high-level slide, this first one, that shows the overall number of recalls that were experienced by the sites participating in the VIP program over this time period. And of course, the launch is counted here at the beginning of 2018. The next slide shows us a little bit more information that's more interesting, which is we can see from this trend that the VIP sites have fewer Class 1 recalls compared to the non-VIP sites over the same time period. There's, they both experience a little bit of an uptick in Class 1 recalls in 2019 and then a slight decrease in 20, but the non-VIP sites begin an upward trend that continues to this day for Class 1 recalls, whereas the sites that are enrolled in VIP continue to reduce their overall number of Class 1 sites. And this is while the number of sites for VIP participation has grown. We can go to the next slide, Kim. This looks a little bit more granularly at one particular product area, and this slide does cover all recalls and not just Class 1 recalls. And this is for the clinical chemistry panel. And what you can see is that with longer term enrollment at about 2020, you start to see a substantive change in the behavior of the two categories, the VIP versus non-VIP, where the VIP continue to reduce their recall rates overall to 2023, where our data point ends, versus those that are not enrolled in the program, where they began an uptick in recalls around the same time that the participating sites started to experience a decrease in their overall recall rates. So the trend towards fewer recalls for VIP enrolled sites means that fewer patients are exposed to risks associated with the hazards inherent in the cause of any given recall, leading to an improvement in overall patient safety. If we could go to the next slide. Kim, thanks. So in summary, this slide shows in summary what the overall benefits are from sustained VIP enrollment as delivered to us by those that are currently participating in evaluation of the data that we have available to us. There's that downward trend in recalls, positive changes in your culture for continuous improvement, savings that come from those continuous improvement projects, the coaching that you get from the program to get there on your quality journey from where you start to where you want to go, and improve patient access and improve patient safety, which are very important to the agency. It's what drives the case for quality, and it's really wonderful to see that come to fruition with some data. So where are we going now that we know what the pilot data tells us about about the program. We feel that this data is grounds for us to try to grow the enrollment of VIP. That's what we're going to do. CDRH is seeking to grow the program and have additional product areas enroll in the Voluntary Improvement Program. To accomplish this and achieve the goal will require that FDA continue our least burdensome approach on industry and FDA, and that having identified pain points from the reviewers, we're addressing those to aid them in achieving a more timely review of their submissions. We've also identified some pain points that, in those pain points that require FDA action to be taken internally to fix, and those we've already started to fix. And then there are others that are going to require communication from FDA to the industry and talk about some of the best practices and things that can be done to facilitate the timely review goal of the program. You can expect to see FDA to continue to participate in events that spread the good news about the Voluntary Improvement Program, and we will participate in events like this one that promote the value of the program to the wider medical device industry. We're also looking for a venue to share in more detail the results from the VIP program assessment that we had done and communicate to industry the best practices for VIP submissions to facilitate that timely review goal that we have. And again, thank you very much for your attention. And I think we could go to questions.
Thanks for your patience. Sorry, I got caught off guard with my clicker. Good to see. Really appreciate the presentation. It was really good. We have a lot of questions, and the one most upvoted, so let's just go ahead and start with Steve's. His question was, is the VIP only useful for large staffed organizations? So what if you could speak to the size of the organization that it benefits?
I'll start, Kim, and then you want to go with some more of your detailed data than I have access to. I think that this program is for any sized company. There are some smaller companies. One of the companies that we spoke to, FDA spoke to during our assessment, was a small company that had about 20 to 25 employees, and they find the program highly valuable, and reported that they consider that it helps them get their product to market faster.
Yeah, I would echo that. We have quite a few companies enrolled that have 50 or less employees. I think our smallest might have 17 staff members. But even some of the larger companies we work with, just due to the nature, I think, of acquisitions, some of their locations are actually quite small despite being part of a larger organization. And so when we work with those individual locations, we're working with a smaller staff. So we can go from 17 people, and I've seen, I think, sites as big as 7,000 people.
Okay. I'm going to go a little out of order because I think this one's sort of related. You already mentioned some of the positive history that's required, but I wonder if we could maybe reiterate that a little bit again. June asked if a positive history is required prior to participation in VIP. How much of a positive history is that required? Startups benefit, but they have the shortest experience. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. There isn't a requirement to have 5 years of a positive compliance history. It's you need to have had an inspection or an MDSAP audit to qualify for all of the regulatory opportunities that are in the guidance document. But the program would consider companies that don't have any compliance track record with us because they have just not yet had an inspection for the program. And to participate, we would encourage that. And the shortcoming of that might be that depending on the situation, you might not be able to take advantage of the regulatory opportunities until such time as an inspection had happened, or an audit from the MDSAP program had happened. Okay.
And to the audience, just FYI as well, feel free to use that Q&A chat. And even if you don't have a question, feel free to go over to the Q&A and upvote the questions that are most relevant to you. If we don't get to all of them, we will be we can forward them on to Kim or Aaron, and if they're able to answer that they have that option. But feel free to put those questions in. I have one other question though that I wanted to ask, and that is how has this program changed FDA's relationship with the medical device industry? Are you able to speak to that?
The sites that we've interacted with have had positive comments about the relationships they've been able to develop with the FDA and the FDA staff members that they interact with, that it helps overcome that hesitancy in talking to the FDA about something that's less than positive. For understandable reasons, there's a hesitancy for that. And so it's one of the truly key features about this program is helping to develop that relationship. And it's genuinely vital for the program to work effectively.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't see this question in the chat, but and I will get to the chat question, so please forgive me, guys. But I feel like this is one that you would want to know. What does the FDA use the VIP data for, and is there a way to see how we compare to someone else if I'm in that program?
So FDA doesn't see the same data that the companies see. The companies get a much more detailed evaluation of their own site. We get sort of a summary set of information that helps us from appraisal to appraisal see how you're progressing in developing the maturity of your quality management system. So we use that fact that you're participating in that program and that's a de-risker for you, and that provides us some information about how you're performing to help us modify the other information that we require in a 30-day notice or a site change in order to review those particular changes to your manufacturing. We feel that there's value in promoting that participation in this program. So we try to meet that 10-day goal for reviewing those so that those changes get to market faster. Kim, do you have anything else to add?
I wanted to add something actually related to the previous question about the history. I just wanted to piggyback off something Aaron has said about wanting to expand VIP. We did recently do a pilot called Accelerate Sustainable Capability, where we were looking to see if the value of VIP could help organizations that were more focused on compliance, whether they had self-identified issues or maybe a 483 or something else that had come up. And so the results of that pilot are now being reviewed with FDA, and I think we'll see the results be published soon, hopefully sometime by the end of this year.
Great. Barbara asked the question, what are the requirements and costs to participate in the VIP? I don't know if Kim, do you want to, who wants to, I should have given you guys buzzers. I'm sorry.
I think Aaron covered the requirements pretty thoroughly. You can always find them online. I think they're on FDA's website, MDIC's website, ISACA's website. In terms of the costs, it varies a little bit depending on whether you're a large organization or registered as a small business. There's some discounts offered for those with an SVB number. If you're internationally located, there are some additional travel costs associated with heading over there. And I think my marketing and sales team will be okay with me saying, I think to get started, it's about $80K to get started.
Okay.
But again, that can vary.
Yeah. Okay. You're like me. You never know what the sales team wants you want to say. The Maureen asks, what capabilities and activities specifically are you looking at when you're evaluating a company? And I know you mentioned some of this, but I wonder if maybe you could go a level deeper, or maybe to answer this question.
Yeah. So usually this changes over time as we get to know a company better and they start to trust the process. But usually when we get started, we'll kind of look at what's in the QMS, but we'll also look at the things that touch the QMS. So how does leadership get involved in setting the direction? where does project management come in terms of interacting with maybe there's an issue on the line, we need to do a project to fix that. How is that project being managed to completion? How are you checking that? We also like to look at groups that are managing metrics. So how do you actually know what success looks like? How are you measuring that? Is that understood consistently? Sometimes we like to look at like vendor management or finances. These are all sorts of things that will help make sure that your business is here to stay in a way that's successful and will ultimately support the needs of the patients.
Okay. Great. Adrian asked, and I know you mentioned this already, is VIP to be used in conjunction with MDSAP or in place since they're both acceptable, or is it verbiage that I'm mixing up? And I think it might be worth untangling a little bit because I don't think Adrian's the only one thinking this. James in the chat also asked about the impact or how this coincides with companies who are ISO 1345 certified or have CE mark or MDSAP. So can you speak to maybe those relationships?
Sure. So the idea of participation in the program is revolving around having a positive compliance history with the FDA. So companies have that with the FDA two ways. You can have an FDA inspection, or you can be a participant in the MDSAP program, which is a internationally harmonized program where multiple audits, one audit covers multiple jurisdictions requirements. So you can go have an audit, and it can cover Canada and Japan and the United States and Australia and so on and so on. Our law allows us to accept an MDSAP audit in lieu of an inspection report. So that means if you are in the MDSAP program, you're getting audited at the frequency that the program requires, and we don't go out and do an inspection. So that's why we accept the MDSAP audit report. So there isn't an ability for the FDA to accept an ISO certification from some recognized organization by the European system or other regulatory systems that are based on the CE mark.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Hannah asked, do you have, or Hannah, either one, apologies if I say it incorrectly, do you have an example of an appraisal task and or what an appraiser might be looking at for a specific process? I think you might have already touched on this one in the previous question, but apologies for that.
Yeah. I mean, I can just say, again, we're primarily starting with conversations as our primary source of objective evidence. So, for example, if we're looking at product integration or technical solution, we might bring together a team of engineers and line managers and start to ask more high-level questions like, how do you ensure you have the right requirements, right? And kind of leave it open-ended for them to tell us. And then based on what we hear, we might ask additional questions to kind of follow a thread. Maybe we heard something from, leadership that conflicts with what we're hearing from line managers. And so we might want to just pull on that a little bit and see what's the reason for the disconnect. But
okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. And a kind of an additional subtle changing question to the previous question for Aaron, Chandni, if I'm saying that correctly, asked, is this for organizations who have already gone through the FDA approval process and have a medical device on the market, or is this for organizations still going through the FDA approval process? It sounded like I heard if you have an MDSAP audit, it doesn't matter whether you have a product on the market or not. Is that accurate? Or
yes, you don't have to. This can be for startups. Actually, one of the companies that participated in the pilot was in the clinical trials development stage of things. So the having a product on the market is not required. You don't have to be in the program is specifically designed for any part of the medical device lifecycle that you're participating in. So it's open to anyone.
I'll also add, we have a number of contract sterilizer sites enrolled, contract manufacturer sites. So just wanted to echo what Erin said.
All right, awesome. The next question then, and we're trying to go through and not ask any duplicative questions here. Let's see. I'm curious if there are any lessons learned from VIP that could inform other programs or opportunities within FDA or for other companies that you can learn from throughout this program. Does that question make sense? Let's focus on the FDA potentially using lessons learned from the VIP program to inform other programs.
So we have that's happened. It's happened through the collaborative community. Kim in her presentation mentioned how they looked across how the industry was doing as a whole and where they had challenges and were struggling to see what was going on in the industry. And during the initial phases of the pilot, it became clear that a lot of companies were having trouble with their CAPA process. That the CAPA subsystem was just sort of getting gummed up and not being as effective and timely as it could be because of the way the requirements were being interpreted. So what became effectively the collaborative community, but wasn't that at the time, got together to look at that and come up with a solution for how you could develop a set of processes in the CAPA subsystem that would allow you to deal with and address the challenges and problems you were seeing with nonconformities and the like up the chain, but triage this according to the risk to the patient, and some aspects would go into different parts of the overall CAPA subsystem that get adequately addressed and corrected, but not everything wound up as a CAPA item itself and required all the level of oversight and review and verification and validation in order to correct the problems. You can read about that on the MDIC website. They have a couple of papers out, one that describes the model and then one describes the pilot that the industry did implementing that and the success they had with it, and by way of verifying that was okay. Many of those sites have been through FDA audits or FDA inspections or MDSAP audits since changing their CAPA subsystem to reflect this model, and they have not had any issues raised by the auditors or the investigators.
How would this program affect the quality throughout the supply chain?
Oh, I think it's universal that continuous improvement can help any part of the supply chain, and that by doing so, you improve the quality of your product. So I think it could be very valuable to anyone that's, again, in the medical device ecosystem.
Yeah, well, specifically, I was curious if we have any examples. One of the things that, well, Barbara asked, I'm just going to share this question. She asked, is there a way to get a list of participants in the program? It'd be great to use a contract manufacturer that's in the program. So I don't know well, I guess we'll ask that question first and then we talk about the quality.
Yeah, that's something we're actively talking about right now, specifically contract manufacturers, contract sterilizers. How can we make that list public or allow people to self-identify in a way that can be validated, so that people, if they want, OEMs can choose to work with these VIP sites. So I'll say that's one way we're working with supply chain. Another is we actually have a supplier management practice area that helps OEMs better develop, manage, and maintain their relationships with their supply chain, including de-risking that through like a tiered structure approach. And we also often work within an organization to start all the way up with design, even clinical trials, all the way through post-market surveillance. So we might look at a collection of sites holistically to see how that entire workflow is functioning.
Okay. One last question that I wanted to ask. I have, let's see, there's one question we already answered. Barbara asked the question, does an organization need to be 1345 certified? Sounds like no. I don't know why the FDA would care about that. I'll let you guys answer though.
No, we can't accept a certification in lieu of an inspection or an MDSAP audit. So having that documentation is a requirement.
Okay. And then Trails asked about whether the VIP primarily focuses on production of marketed products, and maybe that, Kim, would be an interesting uh, elaboration. Just talk about how they focus, or is there any more focus on one area than another?
I would say we can cover both easily. It really just depends on where the organization wants to focus. So it might be one year they're getting ready to introduce like a brand new line of products. Maybe they want to focus in that area. It might be that they're introducing new software, maybe an EQMS system, and they want to make sure that that integrates nicely. Maybe they do have had issues with the requirements from R&D translating to the line. So maybe that's where they want to look. So we can look at all of it, and we focus in where the organization prioritizes.
Okay. I want to ask one more question for my own curiosity, and then I'm going to let you guys stop talking. You've been working really hard. I appreciate it. What is the profile of a lead appraiser, and how do the people who actually are doing all of this appraising and then reporting back to the FDA? Because my own concern about, well, what do they are they going to represent me positively and correctly and accurately and so on? What's the profile of a lead appraiser look like?
Yeah, so one, we're actively looking at expanding our appraiser group to help meet the FDA's goals of expanding VIP. So right now we only have about 45 appraisers in the program supporting those 120 sites. So right now that profile is typically someone who has at least 10 years of experience in developing a product, providing a service, whatever it might be. They've gone through probably around 2 years of training within CMMI. So there's kind of an introductory, intermediate, and advanced level training. And through that, you actually need to get in the field experience before you can progress to the next level. There are various observation stages as well, where we actually have an expert watch that individual in the field performing and evaluates them, provides coaching. And then there's specific training within VIP. So how do you understand the context of a medical device company? What are some common glossary terms or acronyms? How are we tailoring this approach to be very different from a typical audit? So there's all of those nuances, and we have multiple quality checks and tools to make sure that our appraisers are applying the model consistently across these sites, and standardized tools and templates for reporting. I could go on, but I'm not sure how much time we have at the end. So
Yeah, I know we're at the top of the hour here. I think we were technically able to go another 30 minutes. I would not have made you guys do that, although I could ask questions all day long. Um, I I do. It does sound like just we talked about the startup versus the large organization, and I can really see the benefit of a startup too. Once you get past that MD-SAP audit and you have the time under your belt to where you can start utilizing this program, it could be a really big benefit to start understanding the industry from someone with that kind of experience as well, to relay that back to the FDA, how you want to improve and you're focused on quality. So I can see that being a really big value. That's very cool. Kim, Aaron, both of you, thank you so much for your informative presentation. Thank you for your insights throughout today's session. We always appreciate when someone from the FDA is able to come and talk to us about the industry. It's very informative. Those of you who've been listening, some of you are wondering whether or not you will be able to get today's recording and presentation slides. Those are going to be in a follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that. On behalf of Greenlight Guru, thank you all for attending today's webinar. If you see that ticker going by that says leave us a review, it just wants you to leave us a review. So if you want to click on that and do that, we value your feedback, positive and constructive. We value it all. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Everybody take care.